Why Red Bull owns a racing team. If you've ever seen Formula One, you'll note that the majority of the teams on the grid are automobile names like Ferrari, Mercedes, or McLaren. What's more surprising is that the massive brand Red Bull has not one, but two teams competing. That makes me wonder why Red Bull owns F1 teams. What is the history behind Red Bull in F1? And is F1 worth it for Red Bull? Red Bull owns two F1 teams because the brand is heavily involved in extreme sports and sees F1 as a way to strengthen its brand. Red Bull has a large amount of money, and the laws let them have two teams, so they decided to establish a senior team named Red Bull and a youth team named Alpha Tauri. The founder of Red Bull, Dietrich Mateschitz, was a racing fanatic who intended to grow his business by adding two F1 teams with the help of Dr. Helmut Marko to establish a successful training program for new drivers in the F1 category. But before moving further, let's get into the history of Red Bull in F1. The energy drink company competed in Formula One a long time before it had its own team. In 1989, Red Bull entered Formula One with the signing of Gerhard Berger, who became the company's first racing athlete. However, it wasn't until 1995 that Red Bull made its sponsorship presence known by purchasing a controlling interest in and sponsoring the Swiss team Sauber. The recognizable Red Bull insignia was imprinted onto the Sauber vehicles, giving them a design that was extremely like to that of the modern energy drink team. Red Bull sponsored Sauber until 2004, as Dietrich Mateschitz wanted more control over the team's actions. One of the oddities that occurred with the Sauber team was the promotion of Kimi Räikkönen rather than Enrique Bernaldi, who was Red Bull's favored option. The right chance presented itself towards the end of the year, when the Jaguar team was put up for sale for $1, so Mateschitz purchased the team, acquiring its infrastructure, equipment, and staff, and renamed it with Red Bull. The team, which Mateschitz founded with the help of his friend Helmut Marko as an advisor and Christian Horner as team manager, and started adding an initial investment of millions of dollars while making its debut in 2005. In addition, Red Bull acquired the Minardi team towards the end of 2005, launching Toro Rosso in 2006 as a junior team geared to providing Red Bull junior program drivers with an opportunity to compete and develop in Formula One. The goal of both teams was to seek out and develop talented drivers in the lower categories, courtesy of Helmut Marko, and then give the best a position at Toro Rosso. After establishing themselves in the junior squad, they would have the opportunity to move up to the Red Bull team and compete for better positions on the grid. This turned both Red Bull and Toro Rosso into headhunters. As time went by, Red Bull continued to expand. They achieved their first podium position in 2006, and then, to everyone's surprise, Toro Rosso won the Italian Grand Prix in 2008. This was made possible by a rookie driver by the name of Sebastian Vettel, who was later promoted to the Red Bull team in 2009. Since then, Red Bull has become one of the greatest teams in Formula One, dominating the grid between 2010 and 2013, during which time they won all of the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. Meanwhile, Toro Rosso has established itself as a middle team committed to developing new talent. Since the beginning of the hype of hybrid cars in 2014 and Mercedes' peerless performance, no team has had a great deal of chance to win. But Red Bull managed to keep themselves up in the competition. It ended ahead of the Silver Arrows for the first time in 2021, with Max Verstappen defeating Lewis Hamilton to become world champion 8 years after Vettel last did. It's possible that Red Bull could be the ideal candidate to take on technical projects that are even more difficult and profitable because of transitioning from a drinks manufacturer to a technology brand. So why is Red Bull in Formula One? Red Bull was created by an Austrian named Dietrich Mateschitz in 1987. Since then, the company's growth has been exponential, and in 2017, they sold more than 6 billion cans, making them the biggest energy drink brand in the world. Throughout its history, Red Bull has been known for its cutting-edge advertising efforts, particularly those directed at young people, and including catchy slogans like "Red Bull gives you wings," and started advertising at major athletic and entertainment events. From the start, Mateschitz cared deeply about associating the Red Bull brand with the exceptional physical and mental qualities shown by extreme sports athletes. So, in a short amount of time, Red Bull became a major player in numerous sports notably extreme ones like BMX, skating, cliff diving, air racing, and snowboarding. Formula One was not going to be any different. Mateschitz saw the potential for Red Bull to reach a new demographic of consumers and grow by sponsoring the sport because it attracts one of the greatest audiences anywhere in the world. Although Red Bull is not in the business of selling and promoting cars like other Formula One teams like Alfa Romeo, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren or Renault, the energy drink company has always been interested in F1 because of the sport's philosophy, because it provides a fantastic platform for which to gain worldwide exposure. So, is Red Bull's enormous investment worth it? It has been reported by Athletic Interest that Red Bull is technically losing a lot of money in Formula One by investing in it. Over the course of their first 14 years in F1, they invested $2.3 billion into the sport. It is anticipated that Red Bull provides approximately 35% of the team's earnings each year, which amounts to roughly $100 million. However, the primary purpose of Red Bull's involvement in Formula One is not to create money, but rather to increase sales of its energy drink. Its exposure value generated revenue of $787 million in the fourth quarter of 2021, and overall revenue of $2.14 billion for the whole year, making its return on exposure more than double Red Bull's investment expenditures. Although Red Bull does not generate any money from Formula One, the company does benefit from the sport's visibility and reputation, turning it into a marketing machine that has proven immensely lucrative over time, mostly due to the team's competitive accomplishments. Red Bull is a major corporation with a lot of money and laws that enable them to have two Formula One teams, since the sport creates a lot of publicity and benefits provide such advantages. It acquired two teams, one of which would be devoted to competing for triumphs and trophies, while the other would be devoted to training and fostering the development of emerging talent. Red Bull is showing a big effect on Formula One and has been one of the most successful teams since its inception in 2005. Therefore, Mateschitz's investment has been a total success. Now, do you think that Red Bull owning a team is a great strategy? Will the marketing strategy increase its sales and make it stronger? Let us know in the comments section.